And I feel like with powerful women or women who have things going on for themselves or women who are very opinionated and are not afraid to say what they want to say, I find that a lot of guys are very intimidated by that.
100.
Because it's like, this is that woman that you can't shut up. You can't tell anything. Even if you beat me.
There's a very simple reason why most men are going to feel very uncomfortable with their woman being more successful than them. It can be very triggering to a man's fragile ego when his woman makes more money than him, because in society, the man is always told, you need to be the provider, you need to show up, get to work, and make money for your family. And I actually agree with...
There's a lot of men out there who are straight up repelled by a woman's success and ambition. A Columbia University experiment found that single men were less interested in women they met who seemed smarter or more ambitious than they believed themselves to be. Another experiment manipulated test scores of men and women. When the man's score was lower, he was likely to feel less attracted, less masculine himself, and less interested in going...
In today's video, we are looking at why men are intimidated by successful women. So we need to understand that a successful woman is confident, independent, ambitious, and knows what she exactly wants. But for an insecure man, those qualities can sometimes feel threatening. He may worry that she doesn't need him, that she earns more than him, or that her standards are too high. He may even feel like he has to compete with her instead of building a partnership with her. But a confident man sees things different. He doesn't feel threatened by a woman's achievements. He respects her ambitions, celebrates her success, and understands that her independence doesn't make him feel less valuable. So in this video, we explore the real reasons why some men feel intimidated by successful women, how insecurity can affect a relationship, and why the right man won't ask a successful woman to become smaller just to make him feel bigger. Let's dive into these videos.
When I was 24 years old and I was in college getting my first degree, I knew that I was going to be inching closer to having more financial freedom and having a career and like really making more money. And I knew that simultaneously I was going to be taking 10 steps back from being able to be in a romantic relationship with a man. I actually had got insight from this because I would get Brazilian waxes, and the place that I went to get the waxes, it was a local place, and a woman owned it, and the woman that owned it would do my Brazilian waxes. Beautiful woman, okay, 40 years old, I'd say about 5'7", white woman, hair down her back, crazy fucking physique. Like, she was always in the gym. She looked good, okay? Body was T, and she owned the place, you know? And it was a whole spa that she owned. So you already know, skin was looking good, body looking good, money long. She had been married and she had gotten a divorce, and she had been dating around for a little bit, and while she was waxing me, because you know, waxing time is usually tea time between women, she pretty much had expressed to me how she would be dating on the apps, and she had said that she was having a very, very hard time finding someone. And I could not wrap my head around this, because just by me looking at her, I'm like, you're beautiful, you're successful, you're well-spoken. She had an older daughter who was on her way to college, and she only had one daughter, only one child, so it wasn't like she was going to be a burden with children if a man were to come into her life. So I was just so confused as to how a woman that was just so well-rounded like her would be having a hard time dating. And she had told me that whenever, you know, men would, you know, she would tell men about like what she was all about, she said that the number one thing that most men would tell her was that there's nothing that I can do for you. You have too much going on. There is nothing that I can do for you. And that always stuck with me. That always stuck with me. And there is a deeper layer to that. Men want to feel useful, okay? But men want to feel useful at the ability of which they feel like being used. That's important, okay? Men want to feel useful doing the least amount of things. So that's the reason why they don't want someone very successful or someone beautiful, because you've done everything. You've done everything on your own. There's not much that they're going to be able to offer you when you're successful and you're beautiful that is going to make a man feel as though he is of use. And this is the reason why we live in a patriarchy now, because men were very jealous of the fact that they were not useful in any way. Women are, even if we were to burn down everything that men built, we would still be useful in the world because we could just repopulate the world. And then if they wanted to build things, they could build things. So we are born with being useful. Men are not. Men have to have a reason to be needed. This is the reason why they don't like independent women, because they are searching for a way for them to be needed in some way, but they don't want to go above and beyond to be useful in the ways that we want them to be useful. That's why they want to go get a passport and they want to go to Colombia, where they can get punani for 3/4 and a shilling and be useful in that way, because they can afford being useful in that way. They cannot afford to be useful here in the United States. It's too expensive for them to be useful. So I think a thing that women have to understand is that the more agency you have over your life, men are going to like you less when you have more agency, because you have not created a space in your life for them to come in and do anything. Not that they're going to do much. They're for a lot of these men, they're not going to give you more than what you're giving yourself, especially when you are successful and when you are beautiful. And they know that. They want to go for the easier thing that is going to make them useful. So that was a very hard lesson for me to learn at such a young age, seeing it through the lens of the woman that was doing my waxes, because that was the reason why she couldn't find anybody. She had so much success that men did not see a way in which they could come into her life and do anything for her. That's also very intimidating for men. Because especially, I mean, she had more than most of these men, right? She had more than them. And so a lot of men are always going to ask themselves and challenge the idea of their ego. Because how come a woman can achieve that and I haven't achieved that, right? Because they already view women as being less than. They already view women as being inferior. So it's like, how did she get that in the first place? But yeah, that's the part that people don't tell women when they are, when we're out getting degrees, we're out getting beautiful, we're out having experiences. It genuinely is going to reduce the amount of men that you are able to be with, because men don't want you to have all those things, because you're making it harder for them to be of use, even though they're not providing you anything.
Yes, trying to understand what she's trying to say. Basically, we need to know that a woman's success can create a sense of intimidation, not necessarily because they dislike successful women, but because they genuinely don't know where they fit into a woman's life. When a woman has built her own career, finances, confidence, lifestyle, and independence, she isn't looking for a man to rescue her or provide the basics for her. And for a man whose sense of value comes heavily from being needed, that can be uncomfortable. He may start asking himself, what can I actually do for her that she can't already do for herself? And I think that's where the statement, there is nothing I can do for you, because really revealing, it doesn't necessarily mean there is literally nothing he could contribute. It can mean that he doesn't recognize forms of contributions beyond being the provider, fixer, protector, or problem solver. A secure man can look at a successful woman and think, great, you've built an amazing life. Now let's see what we can build together. An insecure man may look at the same woman and think, where do I fit? What do you need me for? So that is what usually matters.
There's a very simple reason why most men are going to feel very uncomfortable with their woman being more successful than them. It can be very triggering to a man's fragile ego when his woman makes more money than him, because in society, the man is always told, you need to be the provider, you need to show up, get to work, and make money for your family. And I actually agree with most of that. I think a man needs to be a very strong provider. Money is one way that he can do it, but if he's not the more successful one in the relationship where he's providing with money, he absolutely has to be able to make up for it by providing emotionally, supportively, in so many other ways instead of with just money. And I think that a woman providing financially more in the relationship can be okay for a temporary solution. But if the relationship continues and the man isn't able to make more money and provide financially, then I think overall long term, he's going to have a really hard time with it. And his woman might even end up resenting him because she's going to feel more thrust into her masculine energy because she's the one literally financially providing and he's unable to do so.
Yes, I agree with what he's trying to say. A man can absolutely be with a woman who earns more than he does and still be strong and also be a valuable partner. The problem is when he personally believes his only real value in the relationship comes from being the bigger financial provider. And I think that's where the ego piece becomes important. If a man has been taught his entire life, your job is to provide, protect, and be the financial leader, then being with a woman who earns significantly more can make him feel like he's failing at being a man, even if she has never made him feel that way. But I also agree with your point, with his point that he tried to say that money can become symbolic. It isn't always about the actual dollars. A woman may start feeling like I'm carrying the financial responsibility, I'm making the major decisions, I'm solving problems, and I'm holding everything together. What exactly is my partner contributing? That can create resentment over time. At the same time, I think the healthier framing is not necessarily that the man has to eventually catch up financially. It's that there needs to be a meaningful balance of contribution. If she earns more, but he is emotionally grounded, supportive, dependable, ambitious, protective, generous with his time, and actively building his own life, that can absolutely work. What becomes unattractive is when he expects her success to subsidize his lack of effort, because there is a huge difference between a man who earns less and a man who has less drive. A woman can respect a man who currently makes less money. What becomes difficult is respecting a man who has decided that her ability to provide means he no longer has to provide anything. And honestly, I think that's the deeper issue with successful women. They don't necessarily need a man who makes more money than them. They need a man who doesn't become smaller because she has become bigger. Let's listen to more videos.
I used to not believe women when they would say that men are intimidated by their education or how sophisticated they are, the things that they like to do, their hobbies. And I was like, nah, there's no way. And I think it's because of the position that I'm in. Then I realized men are actually insecure about women having passport stamps, reading books, exercising, being active. And for me, it's just, I do all those things, so it's so far removed from me. But I realized, like, men are jealous of the fact that I do that, even though they have the opportunity to do the same exact things. And man, ladies, I feel bad for y'all, because it's like majority of the guys in the world, they don't read, they don't exercise, they don't develop themselves, they're not self-improving, they're not listening to podcasts and trying to become a better person. So yeah, the dating market really might be scarce for sophisticated women. Wow.
Yes, sometimes what looks like a woman being too sophisticated isn't that she's doing anything unreasonable. She's simply living a full life. She's reading, traveling, exercising, developing herself, having hobbies, building a career, and expanding her perspective. Those things aren't inherently intimidating. But if a man hasn't invested in himself in those same ways, being around a woman who can make the gap between them very obvious. And I think that's the part people miss. It's not always that men are intimidated by the passport stamps, the education, the books, or the career. They're intimidated by those things women represent. They represent curiosity, discipline, independence, confidence, and a willingness to keep growing. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When you continuously work on yourself, your standards naturally change. You become more discerning about who gets access to you, not because you think you're better than anyone, but because you've built a life you genuinely enjoy. And you don't want to invite someone into it who is going to diminish it. And I don't think women should make themselves less educated, less adventurous, less fit, less ambitious, or less curious, just to make dating easier. That's backwardness. If anything, the answer is for men to recognize that the woman who is traveling, reading, exercising, and building herself isn't necessarily saying, "You can't keep up with me." She's simply saying, "This is who I am." The right man doesn't look at that and feel threatened. He looks at it and thinks, "That's attractive and I want to grow too." Yes, that is it for today. Thank you for watching, wherever you've been watching in from. Let's meet in the other videos.